So welcome to the third talk on trauma and the Dharma, healing and transformation. And today we're dealing with emotions and how to relate to emotions, deal with emotions as they arise. And this be particularly relevant for people that have experienced trauma because the emotions can kind of almost just emerge sometimes without any, for no reason. All of a sudden, we're just overtaken with emotions. I can remember the first time I did that practice, a similar one on retreat. I sobbed for several days just from this kind of, emotion that I'd been suppressing and stuffing down, being allowed to come out and express itself through the physical sensations. So really the invitation to get away from the story about it and to sense into it as physical sensations is so key. But it can be a tall order. I hesitated a little bit in offering a guided meditation like that in a session on trauma, but I tend to to go for it and then deal with what might happen after with compassion and with teachings. I've done a lot of MBSR programs and with people that have had trauma in their background. For some reason, I tended to attract people that into my MBSR courses that had trauma, not just ones where it was a special group for people with trauma, but just a general open to the public MBSR group. And one thing I noticed is what people who have experienced trauma do is really evolved some fairly sophisticated ways of avoiding troublesome, difficult emotions and mind states. Some fairly elaborate systems of avoidance and suppression. I mean, and in some ways that's our natural inclination, right? It's what, if a difficult emotion arises, I think the human inclination is to get rid of it, however we might do that, whatever strategy we might come up with. It's our natural inclination isn't to do what we just did, right? Does that people see that? I mean, inviting people to sense into it in the heart space and then where it physically manifests in the body and continue to sense into the edges of it and so on is not our natural inclination. But we've also learned over time that trying to suppress it creates more pain, right? So we've also learned that. So, we can kind of a lot of people end up kind of stuck or confused about how to deal with very strong and difficult emotions that just rise up seemingly from nowhere sometimes. So we've kind of learned that suppression doesn't work, but opening to it can also be very difficult and can be painful. So we kind of end up stuck in many ways. I'm going to play a talk, hopefully without any ads this time. I'm going to share the screen. This is Robina Kurten. She's a Buddhist nun in the Tibetan lineage of the lineage of Lama Yeshe, who's a teacher I've followed and read his works. I've never sat with him. She did, she's Australian and did work with the Liberation Prison Project in Australia for over a decade. She was a classical singer. She still does some classical singing and is known as a kind of a feminist activist, Tibetan nun. And she's talking here about emotions. So
how to deal with emotions.
Okay, let me just get this on our screen. Oops.
Within that presence or space.
I'll show the screen and then start. No, that won't work.
How to deal with emotions.
Huh.
When we understand the Buddhist view of the mind, the Buddhist workings of the mind, this deceptively simple model that distinguishes, has this clear distinction between what they would refer to as a neurotic, unhappy state of mind, which is a source of my own pain, and therefore the source of why I have problems with others, and distinguish between those and the positive parts of me. Right now, my attachment, for example, and my love, they're mixed together like a big soup. I can't tell one piece from another, you know? Not possible. I can't, so between sometimes anger and compassion go so totally together, we can't distinguish. So this key thing, the Buddha is saying, Buddhist psychology just says that there are two main characteristics to the unhappy states of mind. They're deeply disturbing. They're deeply disturbing. And they're liars, they're delusional, they're distorting, they're deceptive. So then the virtuous ones are positive, they're altruistic, they're connected to others, they're vastly different. So the trouble is with us in our culture, we don't pay much attention to our mind because we pay attention to the brain. We pay attention to the outside world, to the events, mummy, daddy, he, she, it, that. They're the cause of all my suffering and pain. So we notice all those things. So our trouble is then, if we have a tendency to be angry, then you only notice your anger when it's vomiting out the mouth or about to punch you. Or like I said before, you only notice you're depressed when you're inert in bed and can't get out of bed because it's been. So the trouble is, we don't pay attention until it's too late. It's a bit like you're driving on the freeway at 120 kilometers an hour and you discover you can't drive. Well, it's a bit late. You've got to do some work back, beforehand. And that's the Buddha's skill, the amazing skill to learn to recognize that you have thoughts and feelings in it. To recognize more precisely that all our emotions, which are the tip of the iceberg, they're informed by elaborate conceptual stories deep in the bones of our being. And we need to have some space to start to listen to those. It's just practical because they're so deep down, they're literally unconscious. So we have to go to that level. And that's why we have to learn these practical meditation skills called concentration, not so that you make all the pain go away, which is one of the big misconceptions about mindfulness meditation. It's an alternative it's an alternative to a pill. It's appalling. The reason to get focused is so you can listen to all the crazy stories deep down in there that we don't notice until they're vomiting out the mouth. So when we realize that, then we can understand we learn to be our own therapist. So we have two options in our world: vomit it all out or live in denial. We don't know any other way. But with this method, this marvelous, intelligent method, you become deeply familiar with the workings of your own thoughts and feelings, and then you work with them. You don't need to vomit them out or get someone else to tell you how to think about it. You become your own therapist, quite literally. Then we don't need to. Then we can learn to work with our mind, control our mind. It's amazing. Buddha's view is so outrageous, so remarkable, so radical, but we just don't notice it because we think of it as religion,
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, lots to say there. I find her talks of about 3 or 4 minutes is enough for me to absorb, and then I don't have to think about what she said. I can imagine a retreat with her would be quite exciting, quite dynamic, and I guess that her talks are like that. But she had a lot to say there. About how we relate to our emotions. That we're not aware of them till they're either vomiting out our mouth or till we're into such denial that it's feeling destructive in some way to us. So she's really pointing out how the practice is about bringing awareness rather than expressing or suppressing, that we learn to see the deep mental patterns that underlie them. And the deep mental patterns that can be either conscious or unconscious. Last week I asked you folks how you, I think one person mentioned, that sometimes they feel like their head's exploding, and, these kind of mind states that are quite difficult, how you dealt with them. And everybody had, different creative ways of dealing with this. And it's very similar with difficult emotions. And what I've kind of come up with, and it was clear in my mind, but I'll see if it's clear when I present it, the different ways that we can deal with difficult emotions, or and this similarly, foul moods or difficult mind states of some kind, how we can relate to those. And I came up with, in this group, we often talk about the direct path and the gradual path. Right? Now, the direct path, we just simply, we've connected to something deeper than that egoic mind, that our true nature, that still awareness that actually, some of you have been with me on this Dharma ride for some time now, and we spent quite a lot of our meditation sessions on touching into this still awareness of our true nature. And this is really the direct path, that you've touched that, and you can go back to that place and see that, okay, this emotion is just arising. It's not self, it's not me. You can touch into that still awareness that's always behind, behind that, which is your true nature. So we don't identify with the emotion in that sense. When it's just something that's arising, we know that our true nature is still and spacious and always present behind, whatever arises, including difficult emotions that are coming from, a history of trauma or a memory of trauma. So that's kind of the direct, and that's, to teach that way really takes, you would have had to have come along the journey with me for some time to be able to you would have had to have touched into that place in order to just go there when a difficult emotion arises. And for many of us, and perhaps especially people that are just starting to come to terms with the emotions that are arising from trauma, this might not be the place that you immediately go to. So we go to the more gradual approach, knowing that any resistance or aversion only acts to heighten it. So that's kind of the starting place in this practice. The Buddha was clear about this in his teachings. Any resistance or aversion to anything that's arising simply heightens it or perpetuates it. So we let go of resistance in the gradual approach and allow an opening. But an opening can happen in different ways. It's titrated, as I was saying in past sessions. So we don't have to just sort of dive into it as we kind of did in that meditation that we did. It was kind of a leap right into relating to it as it manifested, relating to the emotion that I asked you to identify if one was present, and open to soften to it, and open to where it's manifesting in the body. So there's different ways that I'd like to offer to you to do this. So you can kind of think of I don't want to make this too complicated, but you can kind of think of different ways that we relate to things. You can relate with a single focus or a more open focus, right? A single focus could be the breath or a candle. And more open awareness is, whatever's arising. It could be a nature hike, kind of whatever's arising on a nature hike, whatever's arising in your sense experience, thoughts, sounds, emotions, tastes, smells, thoughts. And so it can be focused or open, and it can also be either internal or external. So if you can kind of think of those as two continuums, very focused or more open, and internal or external. And you can take any of those, so you can have a single focus that's internal, which would be the breath, right? That's an internal sensation. Or you could have a single focus that's external, and that could be a candle or a sound, right? So the single focus that's internal is a little more difficult of a place to rest your attention, because you're relating to what's internal. So if it's very difficult, you could still get triggered, or you could still find it maybe too much at this point in your practice. So you may want to go to a single focus that's external, which a candle or music. I've heard, as examples that people find sounds, any sounds. And that's really a much easier place to practice, a way to titrate. You're still cultivating awareness, but your focus is external. So you can also have an open focus that's internal, which can be could even be even more difficult for someone that's just starting to relate to difficult emotions that are arising, right? Because you're just kind of open to what's ever coming up internally. And you may have to back off. You may sort of go forward a bit and then back off and go back to a single focused internal. Maybe that's too difficult. Go to a single focus external, like sounds, right? So you're just kind of seeing what feel. You're going to that edge, right? But you're not pushing yourself past the edge. I mean, people that have experienced trauma, we tend to push too far. We think, oh, I've got to really, buckle down and do this, right? Or, there's shame in me continuing to feel this, so I've got to really persevere. And but this practice is more about titrating and sort of going to your edge, backing off a bit, going to the edge, backing off a bit. It's kind of like when you do, I don't know how many of you do yoga. How many people do yoga here before I use it as, okay, so this will be an analogy that you might connect to. So in yoga practice, you go into your asana or your pose. A skilled yoga instructor will invite you to take the posture to the edge, right? Till you start to feel some sensation, and you kind of breathe into that sensation at that edge. So you don't take it beyond the edge into pain. That's what we call competitive yoga, which is not a thing, right? Where you gotta, I got to get into this posture. It doesn't matter how much it hurts. I'll stretch it out tomorrow. But that's not yoga, and that's also not what we're doing in insight meditation. We just go to the edge, and you kind of play there, right? In yoga, you play at that edge. You breathe with it. You might deepen it on the in breath, or sort of deepen it on the out breath, and then breathe in. And you just kind of gently play at that edge. And if it starts to feel like too much, you just back off a little from that edge. And it's the same thing we're doing here with these practices. So you can play around with single focus, internal, external, open focus, internal and external. So a very gentle practice, which was brought up by one of the participants last week, was how they dealt with, difficult mind states, was a nature walk. So that's an open, it could be focused, because you could be just sensing your footsteps, right? But nature, where we're taking in nature, would be an open focus, external, which is a place that many can, and it's also, it has a sense of connecting. So an internal focus, open, would be kind of our choiceless awareness practices. Does that make sense to folks? That kind of, so just kind of keep that in mind as you play at those edges, that there are those varieties of ways of cultivating attention. And really, we're doing so many things when we attend in that way, when we're mindful in those ways. Yeah. So that kind of came to me this week as I was, playing around with different ways to move towards emotions that might arise. Really kind of thinking back to and how I related to difficult emotions that would arise. So, we start to see too that emotions aren't the problem, right? But, the problem is really how we're relating to them. We're relating to them as a self, or identifying with them at one level, and we're perhaps suppressing them or having them vomit out our mouth, as Rabina said. Quite graphic description of expressing an emotion, but effective in getting the point across. And trauma and difficult emotions really do go hand in hand, particularly perhaps fear-based emotions. And they can become chronically activated as well, right? As our strategies don't work anymore to deny or suppress, they can actually get quite chronically activated. I saw this working with some veterans. As they tried to suppress what was happening, they would almost constantly be bracing for an attack of some kind. For dangers, body constantly braced for that. It became kind of chronically hyperactivated. So we need to acknowledge our emotions rather than suppress them. Recognize, as a start, recognize them rather than suppress them. I'm going to play another clip here. Where'd my clips go? Okay. I will start it. So this is Rupert Spira, the video clip. Rupert is one of my favorite, I guess you would call him a non-dual teacher as opposed to an insight meditation teacher. If you haven't seen Rupert, this is him. He's a wonderful teacher.
Some kind of transformation that only grace can do. I can't make it happen. No, you see, this bringing close of the feeling seems to be something that we do. In fact, it's not. What we do is pushing experience away. So it is actually what seems to be a doing, a bringing the feeling close, is in fact the cessation of an old habit of rejecting the feeling. The feeling is already close. In fact, all experience is utterly intimately one with awareness. So we don't have to make that happen. But what we have been doing all our lives is pushing the feeling away.
I see.
But we don't realize it. We're so habituated to pushing the feeling away that we think that the distancing ourselves from our feelings is the natural state, and that to bring them close is something we have to do. No, it's the opposite. This utter intimacy of awareness with experience, so intimate that awareness cannot separate itself from its experience and know what it is, let alone know whether it is unpleasant or not. That is the natural condition. And it is this pushing away that is something that we, as apparently separate selves, do. So it's not really a doing. It's you can't make it happen. You're right. It's really a surrendering or letting go of the resistance to experience, and then experience will. Everything seeks the light. Have you ever traveled in southern Europe and watched how the sunflowers just trace the light across the sky?
Yes.
It's the same thing. Everything is seeking light. So these feelings are, if left alone, that is, if we don't resist them, they will naturally come back, because everything seeks liberation in the light of awareness. So these feelings are longing to return to their source.
Yes.
So all you need to do is just cease resisting them. You don't have to work at bringing them. They will just come back. Soon as the sun is over the well, the sun doesn't work hard at waking up. They just wake up and they bubble up to the surface.
Okay. So yeah, interesting. That we don't, in insight meditation, we talk so much about opening to our emotions. And what Rupert is pointing out there is that our natural state is that intimate connection between awareness and, he uses the words feelings. It's referring to emotions. The natural state is for them to be connected, and so we don't, our doing isn't opening to them. Our doing is to letting go of the resistance, of the pushing away, right? So we think we're opening but what's actually happening is what we're doing is we're ceasing to interfere, ceasing to struggle, ceasing to push away what naturally wants to rise into awareness, into the light of awareness. So I found that very helpful to sort of rotate that sense of doing, kind of rotate it around to notice when there's resistance, suppression arising, and letting that go, and then naturally seeing how emotions will just reveal themselves. That they're just there naturally. We can, they can rest then in awareness. Or we can bring awareness. Awareness can be brought to them. So we're not. So the real key to this is not resisting or pushing away emotions. Right. So healing can take place Healing can't take place or transformation if we're pushing away, resisting whatever's arising, including emotions, including difficult emotions. Do people see that? To see the wisdom in what the Buddha is teaching there? Can you see ways that you could open, or to put it the way Rupert put it, to let go of resisting emotions? What that might feel like, what that might be like? Yeah. And of course, the stories that feed the emotions, right? Most emotions, I won't say all, but the vast majority of emotions are the physical sensations arising from thoughts, right? So then, you see that it's a thought that arises that then manifests as an emotion in the body, and then the storyline then feeds that emotion and intensifies it. So resisting thoughts, resisting any part of it heightens the emotion. And then again, having said all that, titrate how you relate to it. If the process feels overwhelming, move to an external object of some kind. Bring your attention to an external object, and that's different than resisting, right? Because it's done with awareness. There's a difference between, I got to push this emotion, suppress it, and get rid of it. It's different than saying, here's an emotion, it's overwhelming, and in this moment it's too much. I'm going to shift my focus to an external object and ground myself, right? And let this emotion dissipate. It's different than suppression. It's basically saying, I'll come back to this another day. Right now it's too much. It's how can I put it? It's a way of being still aware of what is happening. And it can be very comforting, right? It can be a kind of a wise, intelligent, soothing or comforting to do that, to go to an external object, or go to the grounding meditation. So I'd be interested in, I've got lots more here to I could say, but I think let's let it open up to comments and questions from you folks. While you're thinking about that, okay, I've got another video here. I think I've mentioned in the past that I did a lot of training in early days with Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen monk. a wonderful man. I don't know how many of you have met or seen Thich Nhat Hanh speak, but here's a video of a very short clip of him talking about relating to difficult emotions in his usual very compassionate way that he does, and the importance of grounding, being very grounded. That's why I always start these, the meditations on emotions with a grounding kind of meditation. And when a difficult emotion arises personally, that's my go-to, is to ground, to feel the ground, to feel Mother Earth, where my feet are touching or whatever, my sit bones touching Mother Earth. So you'll see why I probably, when I was thinking about it, I thought, I think I got that from Thai. That's what people call Thich Nhat Hanh, is Thai. So let me get this.
When you look at the window, you see the tree standing in a storm. And if you look at the...
I gotta share it, don't I? Let me share first and then I'll see if I can.
When you look at the window, you see the tree standing in a storm. And if you look at the top of the tree, you'll see that the branches and the leaves will swing back and forth violently according to the wind. So the level of our brain is like the top of the tree. Don't stay there in the time of a storm. Bring your attention down to the level of the navel. And that is why it's good to observe the rise and fall of your abdomen while breathing in and out. In the sitting position or in the lying position, just focus all your attention on your in-breath and the rise of your abdomen. That's simple enough. And during that time, keep alive the kind of insight that we already have. I am much more than my emotion. I am form, feelings, perceptions, mental formation, consciousness. I am much more than one emotion. An emotion is something that comes, stay for some while, and will have to go away. I don't have to die just because of one emotion. I know I can handle an emotion with the practice of mindful deep breathing. I have survived emotions before. So we have that kind of insights we should remember, we should recollect. Mindfulness means also recollection. You have insight, you know things, but you do not know how to make good use of what you know. You have the insight and you should know to make good use of your insight. The young person, she is overwhelmed by that strong emotion. She believes that she is only the emotion. She does not know that she is much more than one emotion. And she believes that the only way to end the suffering is to go and kill herself. That is a wrong perception. And that is why we have to remind her that she is more than a perception. That a perception is impermanent. It comes and stays for some time, and you have to go. And that kind of insight we can transmit to her, to him. Maybe later on our portable telephone will have that function, reminding us I'm going to tell the people in Google, because we shall have a day of practice together, that you should provide us with a kind of electronic device that help us to come back to ourselves. And when there is a strong emotion, that will invite the bell for us to breathe in and out. And it reminds us, dear friend, you are more than your emotion. You can handle your emotion with the practice of mindful breathing. You have already survived many strong emotions. You don't have to die just because of one emotion. I think that kind of thing will help the young person, because it helps touch off the insight that already is in him or in her.
Yeah. Isn't he adorable? What a teacher. Yeah. I was lucky enough to do a few retreats with him, longer retreats, and also to spend some time with his monks, living with his monks in Barry, Virginia. There was a retreat at a university that I did. It was a 7-day retreat that he was leading, and 1,500 people, I think that was the number, 1,500 people signed up. So you can imagine a silent meditation retreat with 1,500 people. We basically filled all the residences and then had it in the like a stadium. And every morning he would do a walking meditation where one residence would start walking, and then you do silent walking meditation, and each residence would join the walking meditation, and we would all silently enter the stadium. Actually, I think there were more than 1,500. I think there were several thousand people there. Now that I think of how many people were in that stadium. But when we filled out the form, it said, which residence do you want to stay in? And I just said, I don't care, wherever. And I think what happened was people looked at where the football stadium is, and then they picked the residences that were closer first, right? And then the people that didn't take the time to do that or didn't care just ended up at the residence that was the furthest away from the football stadium, which was quite a ways actually. But what happened was Thai and all his nuns and monks also stayed in that residence, because they would start the silent walk from the furthest residence. So Thai was in the room next to my room for the retreat. So he would get up with all the monks, and then I would get up with them because I knew some of them, and they would do all these stretching movements, and then they would start this walking meditation. So there was just a few lay people that were there that would start to walk with them, and then just seeing people add to the group. Very, very grounding, just doing a walking meditation in silence with so many people. But what he spoke about there was, coming, the tree, don't stay in your head, be the branch that's be the root of the tree, the root, which is he, as he put it, the ground, the belly, or the touch on Mother Earth, whatever kind of works for you. Yeah. So what's coming up for people as we talk about how to relate to emotions? I'd be curious what's arising for people.
Stephen, in the talk, one of the things you said was that difficult emotions can be conscious or unconscious. And the Buddhist nun, Rebecca, I think, had mentioned that sometimes they're so deep down that they're unconscious. And I'm just wondering if you have any particular suggestions for how to approach working with sort of what's unconscious. I have been working with this kind of body-based sitting with emotions for a number of years now. When I first started, it actually happened fairly often that I'd be kind of overwhelmed, and I really had to work on the titration, move back and forth to a safe spot, and then sort of dip into it. And it was kind of scary, and sort of that scariness sort of added to the sort of like fear factor a little bit with it. But that's generally for me settled down in terms of what's conscious, and I'm able to more or less sit with things with sort of curiosity. But I have the sense that deeper down, there's a lot more there. There's, I have some sense that there's some bracing in the body. Sometimes if I go to sleep and wake up, then I think some emotions are coming to the surface. And what Rupert was saying is you just have to cease resisting and things will bubble up to the surface. But like, I'm not sure if that's going to work for me. Like, I'm wondering, is there maybe something at a subconscious level that's blocking or suppressing? I just sort of wonder if you have any particular tips for working with what's in the unconscious.
Yeah, there's so many ways to answer that question. So the human body mind is very efficient at surviving, right? We're really wired for survival, and one of those things is if something is too much to take in, it gets buried, right? So that's really, it becomes an unconscious memory. But with meditation, of course, it can rise to the surface because there's now space being given for something to rise to the surface. So I mean that can happen quite powerfully for somebody who's just beginning to meditate, that has trauma history. The stuff can just come flooding up, particularly with body practice, because it's stored in the body, right? The body keeps the score. Well, this is stored in the body, it gets released. For somebody, what you're speaking about is, you've done a lot of that work. You've perhaps done more than, get kind of the superficial unconscious. Then there's deeper levels that we can touch into, much deeper levels. So for that, it's to give you practices. I think that perhaps the practice that I would recommend would be longer, intensive meditation retreats. I don't know if you've done, 7, 10, 1 month, 2 month, those kinds of, a 7-day retreat. Because that really opens things. Like a week of loving kindness meditation can bring up a lot of unconscious memories, and sometimes they don't even emerge as memories. They're just a feeling, a sense that something's being released. So it's not always when it liberates, or as Rupert said, comes into the light, it doesn't necessarily mean that it forms as a conscious story. It can just feel like something's being released. And we can feel this in our dream states as well, right? People with trauma sometimes have nightmares because things are coming up from memories are coming up, and this can get also very subtle. So I notice the more I practice, the more sort of subtle my dreams are, but they're releasing things from the unconscious throughout my sleep. I'm not as aware of them day to day as I am on a retreat. I've had the experience on a retreat where I'm actually aware that I'm dreaming while I'm dreaming. It's called lucid dreaming. So the mind is so settled that even when the dream states arises, it can literally say, okay, well, that's something that's being released from childhood that's coming up, and I'm aware that that's what's going on, and I'm really kind of in control of of where, whether I let the dream go or whether I just stop the dream and wake up. So yeah, it's all these different levels, but I guess the one I would say intensive retreats would be appropriate to deepen the practice and to allow all that any suppressed stuff that's been suppressed, particularly our early childhood stuff that was suppressed for the organism to survive, right? If there's trauma in those very early years, especially, that's deep work to start to touch that. But of course, touching it is so helpful because in many ways it runs our lives, right? Well, it's unconscious, but it's still expressing itself in the way we are in the world. So seeing it and touching it, letting it sort of come into the light of awareness is very healing and transformative at the same time. So for you, Alan, I would say sign up for a 7-day retreat and see what happens. An insight meditation retreat. There's lots online. They're not the same, especially if it's your first one. For somebody that's been doing a lot of them over the years, the online ones work. But for someone if it's your first retreat, I would hope that this pandemic, this ends, or we at least learn to live with it to the extent that we could do some kind of group retreat, and that would be more ideal, I think. But try a weekend online one, see how it goes. Yeah, I find the container of a retreat center is so important, right? You just feel, you get a sense and a feeling of the support of everybody meditating together, and there is a connection, an energetic connection that you don't get in the same way doing it. You do in a sense, but not in the same way that you get on a Zoom retreat. So yeah, hopefully that's something you can put on your sign up for them as soon as they become available, because I think there's going to be a mad rush for Cancun vacations and retreat center retreats when this is all over. And people want to get away and do something else other than what we've been doing for the last year, and potentially for the next who knows how long, right? I've given up trying to predict. Yeah. Go ahead, Jason. You want me to? Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Yeah. There you go.
Thanks. That was really, really interesting talk. All the video clips were really good as well. I just want to thank you for that, taking the time putting this together. As well, speaking to the retreat, I actually over the New Year's, I did with the Inside Meditation Society in Massachusetts. I did a 5-day home retreat, and I was just here by myself at my house, and I found it really really powerful. I think probably because I really haven't had that much, I'm not interacting with as many people as I normally would. So it was actually really nice to do it online, even though I really would have preferred to do it in person. And I think it would have been more powerful, even more powerful. I think it's still, given where we are right now in the world, like it could be a really powerful experience, because I think we're all kind of in this state of, not having our normal, normal social interactions with people, and we're kind of, craving, I guess, maybe looking inwards a little bit more. So anyways, I found that really, 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 really powerful. And yeah, so that's all I wanted to say, was that I had a really good experience with that one, with that 5-day retreat, and it might be something to look into, like for Alan, if you want to try a retreat. Like, I mean, you also, it's nice, you're kind of in your own home too, so you can go get food. It's it's pretty easy. You don't have to travel anywhere, so there are some advantages. But yeah, I don't know, I thought it was worthwhile. Thank you.
Well, I hope folks got something they can practice with, because really that's what this whole teaching is, that the Buddha offered, is practices, as opposed to things that we think about or just learn in terms of knowledge. So hopefully there's some practices there that resonated with you, that you can take to how you relate to emotions that arise. Yeah. Oh, hi. Yeah, Paul.
Yes, well, and once you allow the emotions to be there and to be present with them, how do you deal with those emotions that are right in the forefront with you? What do you do with them once they're there, actually?
Okay, so the practice is, as Rupert pointed out, Rupert Spira, is to let go of any resistance to the emotion that's arising. So that's the first. And what we do with them is as in the meditation, is sense into where they're felt in the body. So they're usually felt as tension. So one way is to just, where's the body tense? In fact, that can be a meditation in itself, and we've done that a few times, where you simply do a body scan and then see where there's tension in the body, and see if there's an emotion that's releasing in the body. So yeah, I would say, again, if it feels appropriate, and it's not, not to get too overwhelmed, but to go to the body and to sense into, where is this emotion? Where is it present? Is it present in my throat, in my chest, in my jaw, in my forehead? And if it feels like too much to go to sense right into it, to sense around the edge, to see if it can kind of soften the edge of that area in the body where the emotion is manifesting. And if it feels like too much, because that's an internal, we're going internally. If it feels like too much, go back out to external, go to sounds. And then say, okay, my attention's on sounds. I still feel that tension in the background. I'll come back and let that flow into awareness, sense into that, and see what happens, and just kind of play with it back and forth. So again, we don't have to, over persevere to work through this stuff. We can be very gentle and self-compassionate, really caring for ourselves as we kind of gently feel into emotions as they're manifesting in the body. Yeah. So when we say, open to the emotion, some people, and I don't think you're coming from this place, but some people think that means to think about it, right? To get caught up in the thoughts and the stories about the emotion. Right? I'm feeling anger. Well, why am I angry? What's the event, and what are the thoughts? And then that's not what we're speaking about here. In fact, we're letting go of all those thoughts about the emotion, just letting that be, and really sensing into the body, the bodily manifestation of the emotion. Because an emotion is simply a body manifestation of a thought. Most emotions are. There's a few exceptions, but most emotions are just simply thoughts manifesting in the body. And we call them emotions or feelings. Is that helpful, Paula? Does that give you some direction, idea?
Yeah, so yeah, you gave some more details of what to do with it once it's present, because then it could be overwhelming or you don't know where to go from that point.
Yeah. And if it's overwhelming, just kind of step in, step out. It could be very quick. Oh, there's a intense, difficult emotion. I'm sensing it in my jaw. There it is. Oh my God, I can't. This is too much. And I'll go back to sounds or a candle or music or whatever. So I've heard of people actually having music on in the background as a practice, so that they go back to the music and then come back to the emotion. See how what's present in the jaw. Oh, there it is again. Oh, it's too much. I'll bring my attention back out to the music and just kind of, it's kind of a dance, a back and forth. And it's amazing how it sounds like such a small thing. Maybe not to the people that are experiencing. It sounds like how's that going to help, right? I'm just touching it a little bit, and then I'm going back, to an external object. But it's amazing how that just touching into it little by little can really heal. Is the word, really. And as Rubina said, we're kind of our own therapist in that way as we learn to work with the emotions. In fact, I went to a therapist for a while, and I explained this all to her, and she kind of looked at me and said, "Can you help me with this?" I ended up, talking her through this whole process. She goes, "Because this would be really helpful for some of the people I'm working with." And, because her therapy was more about, just tell me the story about what happened, right? And I was saying, no, we let go of the story in this practice. We have to kind of know the trauma story, right? We have to have the trauma narrative, right? But then we just kind of let it go. So there's this place for that, the bringing out the trauma narrative. But I think from that point forward, we're really allowing these emotions to be touched and self-liberate and self-heal.
Stephen, if I could just speak for a moment. It's my first time with you. I did a mindfulness program in the fall, so relatively new to all of this as well, but it was an excellent program. I want to thank you for your thoughtful and thought-provoking presentation. I took copious amounts of notes. I really like your yoga analogy because I'm new to yoga as well. And I think how you suggest that you go to a certain point, and in yoga, no, if you're starting to feel that pain, you just back off a little bit or even pulse towards it. And so I think I could really use that in my practice as well, where things start to get overwhelming or I'm getting too deep. And I think that turns into a vicious downward cycle, because then I'm disappointed with myself, upset, shameful that I can't get a grip on that. So I think using the yoga analogy really works for me, because you're not going to push yourself to the point where you're going to have an injury and then you're going to be laid up for weeks and not be able to do it. So anyhow, I did just wanted to say that I appreciated so much all you had to say tonight, and the presentation that you put forward.
Okay. Thank you. Katie, is that your name, or is that
Yes.
just, okay, sometimes people have somebody else's laptop or so welcome to the group, Katie. It's great to have you here. Yeah, and thank you for those comments.
Stephen, I guess in this practice, I found I didn't really experience any particular emotion, but I did sense into some intense bodily sensations, which I kind of experience. I'm experiencing kind of chronically lately. And those in and of themselves sort of generate a lot of distress and emotion. So I'm just wondering how you might recommend sort of using this approach to deal with that. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so it's you know, the practice in relating to, for example, chronic pain, right? A persistent physical pain of some kind. It's similar, right? We're opening to that physical pain. We might even breathe into that area where we're experiencing the physical pain, breathing into it, and again, just going to the edge. So we might just bring awareness to the edges. So for example, if the physical pain is in the knee, there's intense pain in the knee that exists. Of course, we take a posture that is comfortable and alleviates that pain, you know, so that we're not making it worse. And then, you know, if that arises while we're sitting, that can become our practice. I mean, it doesn't always have to be our practice, but that can be part of our practice, is how do we relate to the physical pain. One thing that I've noticed happens with physical pain is the story around the physical pain is quite strong. There's quite a pronounced narrative about, you know, how I might have caused this or what I could be doing different, and you know, that fix-it mind really gets activated throughout, and it can be active through our meditation. So there could be a real process of letting that go as much as we can. Again, not trying to get rid of it. Oh, there's the fix-it story, there's the shame story, there's the anger story, there's the, you know, all these kinds of stories that get constructed around chronic pain, physical pain. So, you know, letting that kind of flow through like clouds flowing through the sky, And then again, bringing our awareness around the edges of it, breathing into it. Bringing that same kind of self-compassion to the practice around physical pain that we bring to difficult emotions. And one thing I discovered is surrender to it. Because I went through a period of physical pain in my meditation practice, and I tried every meditation trick to try and get rid of it, right? That's what we do. That's why human beings we're wired to try and get rid of it, right? Who wants physical pain? Who wants difficult emotions? So, and I kept, I'd say, okay, I got to let it be. I've got to allow it. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to allow this physical pain. And in the back of my mind, I'm allowing it so it'll go away. Right? The only reason I'm allowing it is because I want to get rid of it. That's it. There's really no allowing, there's no surrender. That's why I use the word surrender, because it wasn't until I literally couldn't fight with it anymore that I went, I can't, there's nothing I can do. I've tried every trick in the book that I know. I give up. I'm just going to, I literally surrender. And at that moment, I felt a real release of the tension, because the tension around it was making it worse, right? That's typical with physical pain, is we tense up the muscles all around the pain, and it, of course, that tightness of the muscles intensifies the pain. At least in my case, that was what was going on. I think it's a fairly similar pattern with so many types of pain. So allowing that to soften the muscles around the pain as well can be it can be the practice. But the word surrender is what perhaps bringing that word into the practice, and see what happens. And realize you're going to come up with all kinds of strategies to try and get rid of it, and just notice that that's what's happening. Nobody told me I was doing that. I had to try to figure it out I figured it out myself eventually. I'm going, wow, this egoic mind is a tricky bastard. I mean, it's just got all kinds of schemes. It's throwing Tibetan Buddhism, it's throwing Zen Buddhism, it's got, the Veda, the yoga stuff thrown in there. It's just, all with the goal of getting rid of it, which of course just didn't do it, just heightened it, made it worse. Yeah. Some of the stretching helped a little bit, right? Because it was head pain, so some of the release and massage. I mean, don't still do all that stuff. It can be helpful, but anything that's got the focus of practice to get rid of it, yeah, it's not going to happen. I better let you folks go. It's getting beyond our time. So next week I'm going to do self-compassion. It's what self-compassion looks like in relation to this practice and dealing with trauma, and what it is, and what it actually looks like concretely in our practice. We touched a little bit on it today, because it goes without saying that you need to bring self-compassion into the practice when dealing with difficult emotions and chronic and pain, physical pain. We'll explore it a little more next week. Yeah. And I think that's it. So I look forward to seeing you all again next week.
Thanks, Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Hello. Just
Hello.
closing that chat that was going there. A sec. Oh, Maureen's still here. Okay. So I'm dying to hear, well, not dying. I really want to hear how it went.
In what sense? Like, what do you?
What came up when you did the practice that we talked about?
Yeah, the somatic kind of movements and so on, right?
10, 15 minutes of movement followed by 10, 15 minutes of, or 10 to 15 of
Mhm. I would say I didn't. I thought I would feel more than I did, but I did it, and because I do my meditation mostly first thing in the morning. I'm pretty, I'm still not super awake, so it's yeah, it kind of feels good, and I was doing the voo sound as well, but I even found that I was sleepy, so that it was like it was strange some mornings, like it would just peter out, and it would be funny, because I'm just so sleepy. I find that I'm not sleepy when I sit quietly. I don't fall asleep, but I find that the physical stuff, I'm still kind of groggy almost, So it didn't really resonate that well. Yeah. I mean, I did it, and I explored it, just kind of trying to be with it. But yeah, I was just observing how I didn't really connect with it, I would say. Like I thought I would, because last week I really did during the session.
Right. Yeah.
That was in the evening, and I think in the morning it's different. It's fun. It's really different.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do any like yoga
No,
movement. Yeah. And
no,
there are,
I didn't do yoga. I was doing more of those somatic things that we did.
oh, okay. Yeah, I was speaking more about doing some kind of morning yoga.
Oh, okay.
Like
No, I didn't do that.
Yeah, sun salutations, or which are meant to wake up the body for meditation.
Okay. Yeah. Sun salutations. Yeah. I could. Okay. So wasn't thinking in those terms. You said something. I know you said something about you could do yoga movements, and I was doing like the cat cow and some things on the floor, but not really like that. Yeah. I was focusing, just trying to feel the sensation of movement and see how it focused my mind, or how if it sort of, well, the one thing it did help is that instead of just going right down and sitting, I would, you know, approach it sort of differently. I would have this first sort of, almost, it was like an informal introduction, or kind of, I don't know. I think I need to explore that more, because it was different things sometimes each morning. But so specifically then yoga is what you think I could explore?
Yeah, I mean, you were saying you were too sleepy in your practice. You're groggy when you got up. So I was recommending some yoga, like morning movements, and sun salutations is one that you get up to, and that really does wake up the body.
That's true. It is true.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's something that I wasn't looking for. I was more looking for sort of a way to start my practice with not just going directly to the sitting, trying to sort of connect through body movement, but I wasn't really that physical with it. It was more the trying to practice that somatic thing. But yeah, I mean,
Well, the somatic meditation, I mean, if you can just sit and do that without getting sleepy and groggy, then you go ahead and do that. But if you find you're getting sleepy and groggy, then that's where I was recommending a 10 to 15 minute yoga sequence, which you can find many on YouTube.
Mhm.
10-minute yoga sequence, or even 10-minute morning yoga sequence in YouTube, and you'll get lots of guided yoga sequences that you can do before your meditation.
Mhm. Okay.
And that was specifically suggested because you said you were sleepy, and that was
Yeah.
why you
There
were
were two
practicing.
things kind of for me. One, I can be quite sleepy, and the other one is I have this aversion to sitting sometimes that I can't. I just think, it's just hard to explain. And so having this idea of, I don't know, somehow this approach where I don't just sit. I start with, like, I was standing up and doing some of the things that that we practiced last week, where you go up on your toes and down again, and moving the legs and letting the arms move and things like that, and just kind of feeling the body going, and then doing the voo sound, and that was kind of I don't know, I again, because I was sleepy, it wasn't the same. I couldn't almost experience it as get into it the same way. And then in the end, the meditation part of it, the sitting part of it, is quite good. Once I and my go-to is really the body scan. But when I'm sitting, I find that so I can really I don't know what the term is, but really just be calm myself and focus. It's just kind of getting myself there for
Yeah.
something that's hard.
Yeah. Well, if you're not sleepy, just do your sit and do your body scan. If you are sleepy, do a 10 to 15 minute morning yoga sequence.
Mhm. Yeah, I could indeed. I don't know if
And
there's quite enough room in here, but yeah, I could.
yeah, well, sun salutation you can do in a fairly small area. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah.
Have to. Is that the one where you go up and down and then you go into plank and so on?
Yeah, I would, as I said, I would follow a specific one that's given on YouTube.
Okay, so 10-minute kind of yoga sequence. Okay,
You
all
type
right.
in 10-minute morning yoga,
Okay.
you'll get lots of choice. Yeah, and they'll be different. I mean, different things. I just mentioned sun salutation because I know that's what people do in the morning to wake up for meditation.
Oh, I guess that's why it's called that.
Yeah, sun and then meditate. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you can just do the body scan without being sleepy, then and you find that I would just do that too. That's also okay.
It's almost pre-sitting where I just don't want to sit for some reason, and so having sort of not a different approach, but something where yeah, I think my battery might go out. Sorry, but yeah, I thought I would try that just to kind of I don't know what I just thought. Not really sure. Just experience something more a physical sensation rather than and getting out of my head maybe as I try to get myself kind of to my practice.
I'll do a longer yoga then. That'll get you out because it's all awareness-based movement. Meditation. You're just moving while you're doing it.
Yeah, and it's I love yoga. I do it with a class and usually once a week and find it lovely. So yeah. So okay, well I'll explore that then. And I didn't do that this week. I was more exploring the somatic movement. I thought it was called somatic movement. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's somatic experiencing is what he calls it, but yeah. Some people call it somatic meditation, somatic exercises.
Yeah, they were interesting. It was sort of somehow connected to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yoga is all about, connecting with that flow of energy that we talked about in the somatic experiencing.
Yeah.
Same, yeah, it really is. Okay, well, that's good. You dabbled in the somatic stuff. It's interesting in itself, but yeah, see how the yoga, a bit of yoga, when you're tired, do some yoga before you meditate. If you're not tired, just go straight into your meditation. And if there's a bit of an aversion arising, try guided meditations. Just makes it a little more interesting, right? To just put on a guided meditation. There's tons of them out there.
Yeah, and I have some as well from my.
Yeah, there's lots even on our website, the Pay Attention website. I have all the meditations that I offer on there. So you can, and they're all like 30 minutes long. You can grab one of those, and there's the foundational one, the grounding one, the somatic one that we did last week. Those are all there. So you can play around with those or other ones. And that kind of keeps the mind.
That in a while. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another option.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Talk to you later.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.